Reporting to the media this week at Post Executive Council Media Briefing is the Chief Secretary, Orville London.
Just a little bit more detail about the retreat. I want to indicate to you that to this time, we have no indication of any decrease in the allocation to the Tobago House of Assembly. But we felt that we needed to, recognizing the international environment and the situation at the national level, that we needed to demonstrate some level of responsibility without, of course, fueling panic among the sectors in Tobago. And basically, if there was one theme, it was about prudent management. And therefore, we decided that what we needed to do is to determine our priorities. These are things that must be done regardless of the situation. We got to minimize social distress. We got to tighten measures that will ensure more value for money. Continuing that process, of course, sensitize all sectors to their increased responsibility during the period. And of course, in doing that, we will want to bring some level of rationalization with respect to labor in Tobago, in the sense that we must be getting value for money, and persons must understand the importance of giving a fair day's work for a fair day's play. We recognize the role of the Tobago House of Assembly in the Tobago economy, and as such that places increased responsibility on us to ensure that we make the right decision. And the process which we utilized was to analyze the situation in each of the divisions and each electoral district and among the communities. And then we would have determined the priority deliverables for the divisions and the communities. And among the general guidelines would of course be that we will complete all ongoing projects. We will focus on projects that facilitate meaningful employment and projects that stimulate the economy. So that you will find that we are in a very fortunate position in that most of our major projects have in fact been completed over the last 5 years or so. So that in health, we have the hospital and over 20 health centers. Community development, within a month's time, the cultural complex will be delivered, and there have been a number of community centers and Y zones delivered over the years. In sport, again, you would have had numerous sporting facilities. So that when we look at the overall Tobago landscape, we can in fact be focusing primarily on community-related projects and activities rather than on mega projects, because most of our mega projects have in fact been completed. So that one of the things we decided also, and you've got to make hard decisions, are what are those that we might wish to, those projects which we might wish to de-emphasize. And among them that we'll have to put on the back burner for the time being are projects like the Shervan Roundabout, the Storby Local Road expansion, the new Scarborough Market, one of the 2 abattoirs, and some aspects of road paving. In fact, just earlier today, we'd have looked at our whole road paving program, determined the funding that we have for the road paving program, and we are in the process, we're going to finalize that exercise next week of determining the priority roads that are going to be paved and repaired during this period. Of course, the question of ensuring that you minimize social distress, this will mean that we have to keep the employment rate at the present level, but we must ensure that we get value for money from those who are being employed in the Tobago House of Assembly. We also spoke to identification of revenue streams, an initiative that would facilitate the development trust. We recognize that under the development vote, the funding was woefully inadequate. we also recognize that it is highly unlikely that any more funding will be made available in this area. So therefore, in areas like housing, the ability to borrow, which would have been tested, and to get involved in public-private partnerships, that is something that we are pursuing, continuing to pursue, and we expect that we should be in a position to reap some benefit from that during the course of this year. And one of the areas, because I think one of the, if you want to put it, advantages of these challenging circumstances is that it often places people in the mindset where they focus on issues which they tended to neglect in better times. And therefore, it is a very good time for us to establish and implement strict guidelines that will instruct the actions and the attitude and the behavior of personnel in the THA in every category across the Assembly. And what we discussed at that retreat would have been the guidelines which we are in fact going to institute. So within the next week or two, we are going to be finalizing those guidelines, and those guidelines will instruct secretaries, administrators, employees generally as to what should or should not be done in order to get maximum benefit from our resources. So as the situation develops, we will keep the people of Tobago more in tune with any changes, but at this point in time, there is really no need for us to panic. The situation remains manageable, and we are determined to ensure that we utilize this situation to institute even better practices in the way in which things are done in the Tobago House of Assembly, and in the way in which we look at treating with value for money, and of course a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, and all those platitudes in inverted commas which must be operationalized at this point in time. One of the issues that came to the fore, that have come to the fore, is the importance of tourism, both in the Tobago economy and the national economy. Because whereas the prognosis for oil and gas might be challenging, the tourism sector is poised for further development. And I want to take the opportunity to congratulate the Division of Tourism for its initiatives and the success of its initiatives over the past year or so. My understanding is that the inaugural flight from Brazil is going to be landing in Tobago on the 31st of this month, and it's going to be coming weekly. And I think the prospects for that are quite encouraging. Apollo has returned, and again, that brings a certain number of visitors to the island. The Secretary and her team are going to be involved in a number of initiatives over the next 3 or 4 months, including the ITB in Berlin. And I believe that we will continue to see an upswing in the tourism sector. I want to caution, however, that nature has been very kind to us in Tobago. But we have got to recognize that a destination does not only sell nature, a destination sells an experience. And one of the primary aspects of that experience is service. And service extends to those who are in the hotels, those who interface with the visitor on the streets, in the stalls, on the sidewalks, in the communities. And therefore, I am renewing the appeal to the people of Tobago to ensure that our visitors really have a pleasurable experience when we come to this island. Because although the sector is on a high, it is becoming extremely competitive. because even those countries which, you know, we'd have considered as our markets, these countries have now become our competitors. And we have got to build on what nature has given us, and I want to actually reiterate that appeal. Going back to the question of the issues having to do with the drop in oil and gas prices, I think we in Tobago have to look at this from two perspectives. We got to look at it from the responsibilities of the Tobago House of Assembly to the people of Tobago. But we also got to look at it from the perspective of the responsibility of the central government to the people of Tobago. And I want to place on record that the people of Tobago are expecting that among the priorities, just as how we determine those things that have to be done and those things which we believe that we can shelve for the time being, that among the priorities for the central government with respect to its responsibilities to Tobago would be, one, the expansion and the refurbishment of the Arthur N.R. Robinson Airport, the construction, the long overdue construction of the police stations at Roxborough and Old Grange, the construction of the fire service headquarters for which the Tobago House of Assembly has given land, the investment in the improved delivery from Caribbean Airlines, because I think you recognize that the situation with Caribbean Airlines is not just a matter of service, it's also a matter of making the necessary investments so that the Caribbean Airlines can service Tobago while still serving the region and the rest of the world. And the repairs to the Dwight York Stadium. We are now in a potentially embarrassing position where after spending somewhere in the vicinity of $12 to $14 million on refurbishing the track, the stadium itself, the structure, which is the responsibility of the sport company and by extension the division of sport, we are still not getting any definite word on this. Discussions are underway between the division of sport and the Ministry of Sport and the sport company officials. But as I speak, I am not aware of what is to be done, when it is to be done. What I know is that it has to be done if we are not going to end up with a situation where we have a fantastic track, and of course people are not allowed into the stadium to see any activities. We also got to bear in mind that quite a lot of interest has been generated in the Legends Football Tournament, which has attracted not only footballers but significant sponsorship from the private sector, and it will be very, very embarrassing if the stadium is not only fixed but in pristine condition for when this takes place. I think it is in June or July. Just one final point. I think most of you all would have been there on Sunday when we had the discussion, the meeting to deal with the review of the Tobago House of Assembly Act and Tobago's quest for self-government. I was very heartened by the response of the Tobago populace. That process is going to continue. As I indicated, the Prime Minister had said that she is going to be back in Tobago in January, at which point in time she will give some information as to what the Cabinet has decided with respect to the recommendations that both parties meet to try to thrash out some of the loose ends, and of course to give some indication as to her take on the incursion into the THA areas of responsibility. So I am looking forward to a response before the end of the month. In the meantime, as I indicated at the meeting, we will continue sensitizing the people, continue our mobilization, and of course continue getting the necessary information that will allow us to be able to provide the people of Tobago with more information and, of course, maybe in the final analysis, a bill that takes into consideration all the aspirations and all the demands that have been made over the last 4 decades. But I think that what is happening is quite heartening, and even if there's still, those who make snide comments, I think the bulk of the people of Tobago are now convinced that we are genuine in our desire to bring all of Tobago together.
Regarding the cultural complex, you just mentioned that it will be open in a month's time. I don't know if that was just by the way, but could you clarify or could you tell us when exactly will it be opening, since the interdepartment is scheduled to happen there?
We're going to be having a press conference to really roll out this in detail. Now, when you have a facility as massive as you need to make sure that when you have the grand opening, everything is working, So what we're doing is that we're using the activities prior to the opening to be able to, see what is going on, if there are any issues and so on. So when you have the grand opening, it just flow. So the first of those activities is going to be on the 3rd, where we're going to have, and they're going to tell you that, I think what they call it, United in Praise. In other words, we opening with a religious, spiritual kind of occasion. And then there are a series of other activities, including the interdepartmental Calypso and Carnival show. But when they come, maybe most likely next Wednesday, they'll be able to give you a detailed account of all the things and then give you some specific information as to when will be the gala opening. But activities will start on the 3rd with that United in Praise.
I know that you are not the Secretary of the Division of Agriculture nor the Division of Community Development and Culture, but some of the workers again have been protesting. In fact, the protest was held today at James Park, that their overtimes are not being paid since 2013. They were promised Christmas, and Christmas has come and gone and still nothing. They want to know what is happening.
Quite interestingly, I did speak to the Secretary of Community Development and Culture, because we just got the news when we were coming out. I didn't get the details. But what she did indicate is that the division had made an announcement that they were going to do everything possible to have the outstanding allowances paid in February. But as I said, I don't know what the details are. Because I think you've got to realize when these things happen, it's normally not because the Assembly doesn't want to pay. There normally are some administrative and other issues that oftentimes don't come to the fore. Somebody attempted to explain it to me. I don't think I understand it clearly enough to try to explain it to you. But what I can tell you is that it did not stem from the executive council or the administration not wishing to pay. There were some issues that were administrative that I think would have made it difficult for the payments to be processed in a particular way. But what I got is, as I said, is that a commitment was made that it will be paid in February. But as I said, people have the right to express themselves if they feel that they are aggrieved.
With regards to internal self-governance, can you tell us, does the forum plan to deliver internal self-governance through referendum?
For Tobago to have self-government, it has to be done through an act of parliament. And that is why we have recommended that the best way to do it, because everybody is saying, both parties are the central government, and all the parties in the Tobago Assembly are saying, yes, we want self-government for Tobago. So there's agreement on that. There are two challenges. There might be slight differences into how, but I think the biggest thing is that everybody wants the credit. And that is why we say, listen, if everybody wants the credit for himself or herself, once we don't all get together, it will never work as easily, as quickly, or as effective, because while you're trying, once you see somebody ahead, you're going to try to pull them back because you don't want that person to get the credit. That is why our suggestion is, in the Tobago context, let us all get together. So if we win, nobody can claim. And that I want, it's the same principle that I carried to the Prime Minister and said, look, listen, if all of Tobago can get together with all of central government and sit down in a room and come out with a process, nobody could say this is London or this is PP or this is TOP or this is TPT or whatever. And this is what I'm hoping, because that to me is the best way, because it means that you're not going to have the kind of friction and backbiting and who's saying who and who calling who treat and who love Tobago more than who. We get away from that. Failing that, we then now going to have to now decide what other strategy can we use. And one of the strategies, as we said, is to go and utilize the expertise available and come up with something which we can then take to the central government and say, what do you think about this? We tried that already. It didn't work. You know what happened? They came up with their own thing, and you had the basa-basa. A third way is to ask assistance from regional and international agencies to attempt to persuade the central government to listen to us. But I'm saying we don't want to go there. The best way is, in fact, what we're trying to do now, where both parties can sit down around a table over a period of time, work out the kinks. And you know, the analogy is always drawn between what is happening now and what happened when Trinidad and Tobago was attempting to achieve self-government. It was not Dr. Williams, even if he were the premier. It was not Dr. Williams who went to Marlborough House. Dr. Williams went to Marlborough House, a team representing the PNM, and a team led by Regional Capilio representing the DLP. And at that point in time, they all sat down and represent Trinidad and Tobago. And when you look at the thing here, they will show where they had to give concessions and people made, you know, Dr. Capilio would have made some good points, Dr. Williams and so on, but the United Kingdom was speaking to Trinidad and Tobago represented by both parties. And it was something like that that we wanted. Now, when they finished and they got the independence, they came back to Tobago and had one of the most brutal elections in 1956 to see who will be in charge. So that joining together in order to achieve a common goal does not make you a permanent ally. You are still autonomous, you are still rivals, but you recognize that this particular battle is a battle that is bigger than your intent. That's all we're saying. I even told the Prime Minister that I will be willing, you know, if in a situation like that the TOP should in fact be represented, because so that all of Tobago could get into that. It was not a matter. The proposal that I put to her was not just the forum, was the forum as originally envisaged. And you know, it's a little disheartening, to be quite honest, because you know, people look and to see, well, what is your motive and so on. But I think, and I must say that personally, you know, sometimes when you get into politics, people forget who you were and who you are. And they put a brand on you, and everybody believes that they're better than you, and they care more about you, and they're more credible than you because you happen to get involved in politics. I am over London, teacher, principal, social activist, Tobagonian. And I defy anybody to demonstrate that they love Tobago more than I do.
The two hotels that were purchased earlier last year, the one in Space and the one Sanctuary Resort, are you guys going to still continue rebuilding, the process of rebuilding and renovating these hotels for this year? I
doubt that it will be cut off, because remember we talked about trying to treat with those issues that will generate revenue, the revenue stream, and also, of course, improve the tourism plant and eventually create employment. And I think you all are aware that there are very few areas that generate employment as quickly as tourism. One of our big challenges is that we don't have enough high-end rooms, so that while we're getting the airlift and people are coming, eventually there's going to be a bottleneck when we cannot find it. So that it is unlikely that that is a project that we will shelve, because it's such importance in continuing to stimulate the economy.
Just for clarity, was Mr. Jack, the TOP's leader, invited to Sunday's forum?
Mr. Jack would have been invited. I'm not certain whether he was invited to Sunday's forum, but I know that there's a letter that was sent to him as recently as less than a month. I'm not certain what the letter was. I have a copy, which I wonder if the secretary did not make that letter available. But I'm not certain whether I was invited to the secretariat will be better able to answer that, because they have a mailing list, comprising a number of people. But I know that he was written to, given an update and provided with all the documents and so on and so forth. And that letter would have been dated sometime within the last month. But the only person who could answer that might be Dr. Guy at the secretariat.
Okay, and maybe are you willing to comment? Because it seems, person looking from on the outside, it will seem as if he's not really involved in the continued discussions. Maybe you would like to comment on that?
Well, remember, if you look at the history, he was part of the original process. We have been on record consistently as indicating that he is welcome to return at any time. And as I said, that he's kept abreast, documents are sent to him. I cannot tell you how often, but I know that there's never been a deliberate attempt to keep him out. In fact, it is to everybody's advantage, including ours, if he and the others can come in, because we still believe that if we continue in a disunited way, that we're not going to achieve our objectives. So that I will welcome Mr. Jack. I will welcome anybody who wishes to join, with the realization that you're no way compromising your position. Because just as happened in 1956, when the battle is won, and I have been on record as saying that, Mr. Charles is on record as saying that when we achieve self-government, all are we fighting to see who is going to control it. And I mean, that is a given. Right? So I don't know why there is the reluctance, because as far as I'm concerned, there is absolutely nothing to be lost. Because nobody could take the credit from you when it is won, and when it is won, nobody can prevent you from fighting for it.
Thank you for tuning in to another Tobago House of Assembly's Post-Executive Council media briefing for the week ending January 24th, 2015.